Urgent Just Home Reaction. This is why North Korea is quickly preparing for war by channel Task and Purpose. What? This is similar to how Russia was like posting people at the border before, like, oh, just like this is just intimidation tactic before, oh my god, they're invading. Is this similar to that? Because that would be insane. I'm guessing against South Korea. Where else would that, like, they're not attacking China. I mean, that, of course, South Korea. Oh, come on, man. Is there going to be war between North Korea and South Korea now? I mean, that would be insane. Like, South Korea is like an economical powerhouse. Like, world will feel the effect of that. US is going to enter. That is like South Korea and US has that kind of treaty or something. Probably, right? I don't know. Japan's going to enter too, just out of fear. Or this is going to be too much, right? Russia, Ukraine is one thing. North Korea versus South Korea would be another, because geopolitics would demand a lot of countries would join in. So I don't know. So it's going to be interesting. This is by the channel Task and Purpose. I like Task and Purpose. It's like talk about geopolitics like this, any military related things, which is like interesting. He's like quicker at that. Like some event happened like a week ago, he'll probably make a video pretty fast. So it's good. So I'm guessing this is another thing that's happening. Yeah. So let's do this one. What? Oh, there we go.
Is North Korea preparing for war? This is the question Western militaries are increasingly asking themselves after a massive resurgence in recent missile activity by the DPRK. It's not just military activity though. There are also some diplomatic movements unlike anything we've seen before. Since 2022, the Hermit Kingdom has launched a record number of nuclear-capable ballistic missiles.
Hermit Kingdom, what does that mean? Because Hermit like hides under a shell or something, so is that what? I don't know. What's with that?
Including ones that would theoretically be able to reach the continental United States. This is now being classified as the #1 security threat by some American military brass. The rise of international conflict over the last 2 years created a gold mine of opportunity.
I mean, technically, yeah, right. I mean, Russia is one thing. North Korea is like truly walled off entity in its own, right? Russia has always been threat to US, so it's nothing new type of way. While North Korea has become this like reaching US mainland threat very recently, like 10 years ago or something. I don't know, it was very recently, right? So, and North Korea being like proper walled off, entity, right? Russia is indirect in a way, sure, but like North Korea is like proper, dictatorship in that way, right? And something like that, like some military power like that, which like most citizens are like mandatory army people, right? Military people. Some who has nukes now, whose missile can reach mainland US. Yeah, that's like one of the biggest threat, because you don't know, like US, Russia Ukraine thing just caught off guard. Suddenly one day it's like, what the fuck? Russia is attacking Ukraine. What if something like that happens but with missiles now? Only thing you can think of, like maybe they'll be afraid like US will like flatten North Korea or something if they even try. But who knows what goes through their head, I guess. I don't know.
Opportunity for North Korea, not just militarily, but economically and politically. And the country is looking at their potential options for finally changing the status quo. But is this just more of Kim Jong-un's saber rattling, or is there a legitimate security threat on the horizon? But before we get into that, I think most people know what it's like to get into a car accident. And if you don't, I envy you. They're not.
It's probably flexing. Oh, look at the weekend, like the North Korea does that a lot, right? Or there was like a threat of North Korea and just like everything's fine.
Fun. Whether it's a fender bender or, God forbid, an accident that lands you in the hospital, you need someone on your side to make sure you come out on top. Morgan & Morgan has been fighting hard to get their clients what they deserve for over 30 years, and they'll fight to get you the best results. They don't settle for lowball offers provided by insurance companies. And when you're seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions. Just in the past few months alone, Morgan & Morgan saw verdicts up to $28 million, and their fee is absolutely free unless you win. Insurance companies are incentivized to pay out the absolute lowest amount possible.
That is a thing in US, isn't it? Like lawyers will be like, okay, if you're the victim, I'm not going to charge you unless I win. Unless you get the money, I'm not going to get the money, which is like, that's surprising. I don't think that happens here where I live. So yeah. Okay, this only applies to, I guess, victim, right? Like anybody who's gonna get the money or something, like possibility of money. I don't know.
It takes trained and experienced professionals like Morgan & Morgan to adequately assess damages and then properly fight on your behalf to get you what you deserve. Morgan & Morgan won't stop until they know the proper verdict is reached. It takes just one click. You can start your claim now at forthepeople.com/taskandpurpose or click the link in the description below. North Korea is one of, if not the most isolated countries in the world. Overwhelming sanctions on the nation from foreign governments block the majority of international trade that would otherwise go into and out of the area. These sanctions in turn greatly limit the DPRK's ability to manufacture or develop new weapon systems. Any strategy to generate income for—
Let's be honest, it's China, right? China has a lot of rare earth elements, right? Somebody said that like rare earth elements not really rare, it's just in China, something like that. So you feel like walled off that much, how you're receiving things, probably from China, right? You can get a lot of resources from there to build shit.
For the military has to be done through shady backdoor, under-the-table deals with the few nations that trade with North Korea like China, Russia, Iran, and Syria. And even then, it's still done reluctantly. Since the 1990s, a staple of North Korean leadership has been the building of its missile program, regularly conducting practice launches, parading whatever their fancy newest missile was, and even performing live nuclear tests as a show of power and capabilities. These threats were always a bit ambiguous in their legitimacy in terms of if the missile systems would have actually worked, and if so, was North Korea actually willing to commit them? Kim knows that any hot war with the South or any Western power would spell the potential end for his regime. But now, new opportunities are presenting themselves that might change that calculation. Between 2019 and 2022, the number of missile launches conducted by North Korea was actually falling at some of the lowest numbers in over a decade. 2019 saw only 10 launches, and 2020 only had 4. At the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, however, those numbers skyrocketed to record levels. This was accompanied with the release of a dramatic video of Kim directing mobile missile launch vehicles, which even by North Korean standards was pretty cringe. 2022.
That's real? Oh my god. Oh my god. So let me get this straight. They hate everything American and somehow still gonna mimic American Hollywood? Right, with the glasses on, all the like special effect and everything. Okay. Okay. I would have thought that's fake, but the way, of course, is real, right? Do they do that a lot? Do they like put out a video like that, like flexing video?
Alone saw over 70 missile launches, a new record. North Korea rocket and missile launches are typically timed in and around corresponding with major joint training exercises between South Korea and the United States, and are said to be done as quote-unquote defensive deterrence against imminent invasion preparations from the South. Despite recent doctrine changes in the North Korean military that permit the use of nuclear weapons offensively, intelligence analysts across the board agree that it would end North Korea as we know it. Kim knows this, and his goals with his growing number of nukes are twofold: assert dominance on the Korean peninsula and reemergence as a national power on the world stage. However, it can't do either of these things without a significant economic income. As unlikely as it might seem, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been one of the best things to happen to North Korea since Dennis Rodman. Prior to the invasion, Russia, for the most part, followed many of the—
Because Russia bought a lot of artilleries from North Korea, basically in business, right?
United Nations sanctions on the DPRK. The divisiveness of the invasion cooled relations between Russia and many countries in the UN. This led to Russia dropping the majority of sanctions and increasing its trade with the country. The economic benefit goes two ways. North Korea sells ammunition Russia is desperately short on, like rockets—
All of them. Why did Russia put sanctions on North Korea? That doesn't make sense, right? South Korea is like more US side, obviously. Russia put, why, like, okay, North Korea versus South Korea because of that and a lot of other things, because of Japan. Western countries are gonna put sanctions, sure, but why would Russia put sanctions? I don't get that part. Somebody comment down why Russia did that.
and artillery. In turn, Russia sells food, commodities, and cheap oil back to Pyongyang. The invasion of Ukraine has fragmented UN Security Council efforts that were previously unilateral, like sanctions on North Korea. Both Russia and China recently shot down a resolution that would have made it harder for North Korea to obtain materials for missile development. Russia also threatened South Korea that it would no longer work towards preserving peace in the region if it committed to sending lethal aid to Ukraine. So not only is the North gaining material benefit, but strong international political lobbying in ways the country has never experienced before. The US State Department is now concerned that this is only the beginning of arms deals between the two nations. Kim Jong-un made a call for closer strategic cooperation between his country and Russia. The fear is that in exchange for their support during their invasion, Russia would enable North Korea's goal of obtaining technologies for their satellite and nuclear-powered submarine programs, which just saw the first successful spy satellite put into space. This feeds into North Korea's nuclear goals of enabling technological developments and gathering funds for ICBM programs. The recent bolstering in legitimate military capabilities has emboldened the Kim regime to take on a more aggressive military stance. North Korean leadership—
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know how I feel about this, right? If North Korea becomes stronger, obviously North Korea is going to side with China. India's gonna have problems, right? I don't know. I feel like India is like not going to be in top list of problems, but it's still going to have problems, right? If China India happens, North Korea might be one thorn against India, let's just say, or direct attack against India or something. So that's like, I don't know how I feel about this. Right, North Korea is like every citizen is like, what is it, military or something? So the military army is bigger, military is bigger in that way, right? And if they gain technology, gets better, gets stronger, obviously sides with Russia and China. I don't know what relations of India and Russia is going to be in the future. Are they going to be stronger or weaker based on that? I don't know. If somehow relations get stronger, Russia might intervene between North Korea versus India if like India and China goes to war for whatever reason. Geopolitics is really weird, man. I'm not gonna lie. It's like only problem you can think of is like in World War I, they're like clear two parties become the thing. That's why World War I was so big, right? You don't need that, right? Because let's just say like India is like leaning towards West a lot in past few years, but India still a good relationship with Russia. China and India is going to be enemies. North Korea might become enemy of India because of that, but North Korea might not become enemy of India because of Russia. So you need something like that. It doesn't create clear two parties. So things might dial down, I guess. I don't know.
On January 15, 2024, called for an amendment to their constitution that would change the country's priorities from reunifying the two Koreas to simply saying South Korea is their #1 enemy. That seems a bit unfair because the United States worked really hard to hold that #1 spot for as long as we did. In all seriousness, though, this is a major move when it comes to international diplomacy. As recently as 2019, South Korea's president had proposed to Kim that they should try to peacefully reunify their countries by 2045. Those peace talks didn't end up really going anywhere, so if peaceful reunification—
only one guy was smiling there. That tells you everything, right? Yeah, I like how China and North Korea both are like pissed off at US because from their perspective, US is just meddling. China is like, Taiwan is ours. Why are we trying to take over? Like, why are you meddling? North Korea would be saying like, why are you meddling? I'm going to take South Korea. North Korea would be something similar to that. So basically, in their view, US is some meddling part from the distance or something.
Unification is off the table, that means forced military action is now the other option. But if we think about this realistically, Kim wouldn't want to capture South Korea, even in his wildest dreams, because he would then somehow have to control a population of 50 million South Koreans to his 25 million. It's just not in the cards. Here's what Kim had to say.
Okay, well, I don't understand that part. Okay, he can like govern like more than twice of his people. Yeah, he also has control over South Korea and its resources. Right? He has control over Samsung and things. It's like, right? South Korea's economy is like really powerful. If anything, getting South Korea, which means united Korea under one power, like under Kim Jong-un, right? One dictatorship is going to be even more stronger now, right? So if they do take over South Korea and all South Korea resources becomes theirs, North Korea's, yeah, that they become powerful at a level they're not gonna fall that fast or something.
The reunification of Korea can never be achieved with the Republic of Korea. He then simultaneously shut down 3 government agencies that oversaw reunification efforts, namely the Committee for the Peaceful Reunification, on the off chance that we still didn't get the message here. Just days after the call for constitutional change, North Korea's famous Arch of Reunification was torn down. The monument was considered an eyesore by the Korean dictator, proof that Kim is worse than your HOA. The abandonment of the idea for reunification is actually a significant break in the traditional talks from the North Korean leadership. Both Kim's father, Kim Jong II, and his grandfather, Kim Sung, always viewed the South as an object for peaceful reconciliation, but now the tables are turned, with South Korea itself being the target of military action. Many experts tie part of the current—
I mean, to be brutally honest, South Korea was an economical powerhouse that is today. If some country becomes economical powerhouse, if governments become somewhat stable, if its prosperity is there, everything's going to become stable. If it has a stable, strong government, obviously now they're going to think like, okay, only way unification happens is like we become like South Korea or something, like let go of dictatorship and like give power to the government or something, because South Korea is not just going to give up their whole thing, their government and everything, become part of the dictatorship that is North Korea, right? So before them, there was a thing they probably thought like, okay, maybe we'll convince South Korea or something, or just like by force take over South Korea and will become under my dictatorship. They know that that's not going to happen now with all the economical power South Korea has, with the Samsung and everything, right? And with the US backing them. They're like, they know that that's never, unless we forcefully take it, it's not going to happen. So I guess that's the reason.
Rise in tensions to the breakdown of negotiations in 2019 at the Hanoi summit, when President Trump and Kim Jong-un held extensive talks. The February talks were unexpectedly cut short due to disagreements on lifting sanctions on the DPRK. The United States claims that the North demanded the lifting of all sanctions, while Korean diplomats claim that they only wanted 5 removed. But the end result was a cascading effect, leading Kim to assert that their international goals in the region could only be met with warfare. Despite holding the 2nd largest military in the world by raw numbers, North Korea, as it stands, isn't poised to invade the South on its own right now. It needs 2 things: more nukes and more allies. Just as the war in Ukraine has bolstered North Korea's bank account, the growing tensions and conflicts in the Middle East have bolstered their nuclear capabilities. North Korea and Iran have been illicitly trading weapons since the 1980s. During the aftermath of the Iran-Iraq War, the 2 nations began cooperating on missile development, which has continued regularly to this day. As Iran has continued to facilitate violent acts of war and terrorism over the past decade, and especially recently over the war in Gaza, it has further isolated itself from the international community, which only drove North Korea and Iran to strengthen ties. So according to this white paper published by the Congressional Research Service, the 2 countries used their relationship to both obtain nuclear material and conduct joint research on developing it into nuclear weapons. North Korea has at least 5 active uranium mining sites and helps provide Iran with nuclear material for their own programs. Several reports have verified that the North Korean scientists have worked in Iranian labs, and Iranian scientists have physically been present at every North Korean nuclear test to date. The breakout of fighting in Gaza and Yemen, which has heavily involved Iranian influence, has further pressured Iran into seeking support from North Korea. This cooperation has a 2-fold benefit. It forces Western governments to spread anti-proliferation resources away from the DPRK and increases the rate at which the North can fill their nuclear arsenal. To date,
This is the fear I have, right? Look, I'm not gonna say I like Trump regime or even the Biden regime, right? I'm not in either way, but one thing for damn sure, I feel like current regime of Biden and their people, right? Are they seeing things like long distance? I feel like Putin might be mastermind. They're seeing things. Right now we are saying, okay, Putin is losing, but what if Putin probably envision all these things? Like if I do this and do this, everywhere, all the enemies, let's just say, of the West or whatever, right? All the antagonist entities of democracy might just like come together and just like one opportunistic way can build a power, right? Because of Russia-Ukraine thing, like North Korea is getting money, great. Iran, North Korea is like teaming up now, okay, right? Against the Western things. What if Putin envision all these things? And what if like, like American diplomats and the current regime couldn't foresee this, right? Because if they could have like did something in the meanwhile that bolsters things, right? That makes sure these people don't come together or form an axis or something, right? Because future, I don't know where this is going, right? If they do form an axis, like China, Russia, North Korea, and now Iran as well, in their own places with their own strength, they could do a lot of damage, right? Especially against West and things like that, against USA and things like that, right? I don't know.
North Korea has anywhere between 30 and 40 nuclear weapons. Many of these warheads are sitting inside of the Hwasong-18 long-range ICBMs. Before Kim started tearing down statues and changing the constitution, North Korea's nuclear strategy was to deter American presence in the peninsula. The thinking was that in the case of a war between the two Koreas, the US was less likely to commit to a fight if it came with a nuke against the tens of thousands of troops in the area and the surrounding American island chains. Ultimately, they would have hoped that the cost of war would be too great.
I mean, this is not the same US you had during the Korean War. The US is very different now, right? Logistics is very different, right? They could bolster area with a lot of like aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines and things, right? Their whole mentality would be like, okay, you're gonna flex, we're gonna flex 10 times more. They're not going to fear nuke because they know that they have nukes around it, multiple nuclear submarines that can flatten the whole North Korea if needed. So I don't know. People, when they think about what to do against US, I feel like they're not really taking into account like what is US's state right now, like how powerful they are, right? What kind of technology they have right now. Just like Starlink or whatever, like Elon Musk's Starlink, right? That alone had a real help in Russia-Ukraine thing. That's just one element from one private party from USA. Elon Musk is private. Like imagine all the DARPA and all the things that US has, right? A lot of things probably most people don't know. It's like classified things. A war like this would come into play.
Great to actually potentially fulfill any political promises made. Ironically, at least for Kim, this has completely backfired and has actually made the alliance stronger, according to the reports. It even had the unintended consequence of bringing in Japan to play a bigger role if the tensions were to spill over into an open conflict. This was the biggest reason for the North's shift from using nukes as a deterrence into an all-offensive capability.
I don't want to pause too much, but people really need to chill out against previous aggressing powers, right? People know that Germany is no longer like aggressive military, but people don't realize that a lot of things Germany is making, German engineering, right? A lot of military equipment, a lot of weapons, HNK and things like that. Japan might be similar. Japan is making like next generation of air dominance fighter with Northrop right now, right? So if Japan does say like screw it, we need to power up with the help of US or whatever, they're going to be really powerful because they were once that kind of powerful in the past, right? So yeah, I don't know. Germany is like also increasing their military. Who knows how Germany is going to be 50 years from now on, because German engineering, that will come into play.
To make that a reality, they needed more. As it stands, the 30 to 40 nuclear payloads North Korea owns do not pose a large enough threat to facilitate any goals of the country. That might sound crazy, given just one is enough to wipe Seoul off the map, but the US is poised to handle that. Given the comparatively rudimentary construction and small number of missiles, they would have been very easily tracked and intercepted by existing air and space defense networks scattered around Korea. Many analysts agree that with current trends, once North Korea reaches an arsenal of 200 nukes spread across short, medium, and long-range ballistic missiles, they would then be able to achieve a level of...
The problem with Seoul is it's really close to North Korea. Way too close. It's just like there, right? Even if you can, intercept a nuke, North Korea can make a nuke which basically, let's just say, trigger as soon as it's like attacked. As soon as it's like taken down, it could just basically explode in the air. All the radiation alone would basically mess up Seoul as a whole. So Seoul is really problematic place with the border that being close. That's the whole problem Russia has with the Moscow, right? In Soviet Union time, it's like a bigger territory. So there was like a gap between West and like Moscow. With the current Russia, it's like Moscow is just very close to the border, right? That's why they're trying to take like previous Soviet countries like Ukraine and thing. There's like enough gap or something. So that applies to Seoul a lot. So even if like a nuke explodes in the air while it's being intercepted, Seoul would be screwed anyway.
Coercion that has significant weight behind it. North Korea is seeking to gain the ability that is known in defense circles as nuclear shadow. Now, nuclear shadow is part of an idea that if a country has a certain level of nuclear weapons, it actually allows for smaller, less direct attacks to go unreciprocated. In layman's terms, it means that the North would be able to get away with a lot more without worrying.
Oh my god, stealth nuke missiles. Oh my god. Let's hope that's not real. Because that's what you need, isn't it? That's what you need to be terrified.
About military retaliation. For example, if North Korea were to send in a small team of infiltrators to conduct espionage or direct sabotage against the South, the risk that the South would respond proportionally is greatly diminished, because further escalation could bring about full-scale nuclear war more easily. The possibility for lower-level hostility acts deemed acceptable under a nuclear shadow vary greatly. The North would likely increase its rates of cross-border incursions and conduct small-level sabotage against coastal infrastructure like oil pipelines. Using amphibious special forces teams, acts could go even as far as open-water nuclear tests, which could cripple Southern Electronic Systems with an EMP, but still manage to hover below that retaliatory threshold because it occurred in North Korean territory. It ultimately comes down to how much risk the North is willing to take, and how determined the South and the US would be to react appropriately. When rogue states like the DPRK are able to get a hefty number of nukes on their side, it will lead them to...
I think people are really underestimating how much Biden is gonna go, right? Okay, right-wing people, Biden is like he can't even walk or something. Okay, I get it, but seriously, sit down and think. Biden just suddenly decided we're gonna pull out of Afghanistan, and he did. He makes decisions like that. Is it because of his age? Is it the point that he don't give a crap, or was he like always like that with the classes in, like that, like I'm gonna do this? So I feel like Biden is like one of those people who like instantly make a major decision, whether good or bad, right? He would make those decisions, right? So if US might, Congress and everybody might be struggling, should we get into with like South Korea, North Korea thing? Is it big enough for us to get in? Biden could just decide, fuck it, South Korea is really important to us, we are at war against North Korea. He could just make that decision. So Biden's like one of those people who just like make snap decisions like that, right? I don't know.
To be able to conduct more conventional style attacks, because retaliatory strikes come with too high a cost. A major goal of Kim's regime is to stop large-scale joint training exercises between the United States and the Republic of Korea. There are massive theater-level exercises usually conducted in the spring and summer at least once a year. As it stands, the size of the Republic of Korea's military is about a third of their adversaries across the DMZ, and there are nearly always in a joint combined formation with the American forces in country. International level cooperation in fighting is one of the hardest skills a military can master, which is why the continuous training with both nations is a critical linchpin in deterring an invasion from the north. Obviously, for Kim and his compatriots, a well-trained South Korean military poses problems if he seeks to reunify by force. In the past, North Korean officials have declared that these training exercises are a direct threat to their nation, and according to them, it destroys any hope of peaceful inter-Korean relations. For example, prior to the large-scale training in 2021,
basically North Korea saying, what you doing there? Why are you training them? Why are you helping them? I'm gonna go crazy if you help them. You don't want, okay, don't help them, go away. These drills are threatening, man. I'm gonna make this into critical war zone if you do this.
Jong called the drills unwelcome, self-destructive action, and that the United States and South Korea will face a more serious security threat by ignoring our repeated warnings to push ahead with the dangerous war exercises. Going on to further accuse South Korea of treacherous treatment of the weak relations between the two countries. These exercises assure that the North would not have a decisive or overwhelming advantage in a ground fight, given the large numbers of imbalance. If North Korea were to succeed in removing the United States from the peninsula due to political pressure and nuclear deterrence, they would have a much more level playing field if they decided to cross the 38th parallel. Using a possible nuclear shadow and stronger alliances with outside countries, North Korea is attempting a sort of breakout. In a December 2023 speech, Kim called his country's military-industrial complex to accelerate war preparations, which is nothing new for the regime going back to the 1950s, but followed it by saying that he's expanding cooperation with anti-imperialist independent countries, aka Russia, China, and Iran. While the Middle East and Ukraine are wrought with ongoing violent conflict, Kim is eyeing one more zone to give himself an...
Basically, it's like, get ready for war. Me and my homies are ready now. We are together. That's what that was.
Advantage. Taiwan. The final piece of the puzzle that would greenlight a North Korean attack on the South would be a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Like how the war in Ukraine opened up closer relations with Russia.
Yeah, imagine if they did both together, right? China and North Korea and Russia in the background, basically, and Iran also. Just said like, screw it. China, you attack Taiwan. North Korea, you take South Korea. Russia, USA will be like split between two or something. Imagine if they did that. Damn.
And drop most sanctions, China would likely follow suit. The economic and military cost to China given a Taiwan invasion would be beyond significant. China, like Russia, would be subject to its own set of sanctions and would be forced to allow North Korea into its economy to at least help recoup lost income. Second, China has often been seen as a major factor in preventing the Kim regime from invading, being their biggest trading partner and not wanting American thermonuclear warheads detonating along their border. The Korean Peninsula would be an easy answer to regain regional influence lost after a war against Taiwan, and would likely greenlight North Korean aggression, as it would help spread China's own power. American costs in a war over Taiwan would reach tens of thousands of casualties and largely drain it of military resources, and the political will to fight another massive war in the region that could easily escalate into nuclear exchange, and could just be enough to tip Kim's scales. So is North Korea's invasion of the South imminent? Most sources point to no, at least for the immediate future, and the United States is still pushing for de-escalation amongst the harsh rhetoric and saber rattling. But ultimately, time will tell if North Korea will get the window of opportunity it has pushed for decades. Thank you for watching. Please.
See, the problem is North Korea is not just gonna spend so much money trying to build nuclear weapons, ICBMs and things, and not really sell it to people. Like, we are doing this because there might be revolt, like, okay, they're just talk or something. So I feel like North Korea attacking South Korea is coming. I don't know when. I think what West should do, or US should do, is like try to build relationship with India in a way that if like Taiwan attack does happen from China, and at the same time North Korea attack does happen from South Korea, US and India should intervene in a way, right? Because India has like playing this. If like China becomes more stronger, takes over Taiwan, India is actively at war in a way. Let's just say it's war against China, right? There's constant attack at the border, like very frequent. You'd be surprised how frequent attack happens between India and China in borders, right? China point blank saying like one of the states of India is there or something, right? Having relationship with Pakistan just so Pakistan can threaten India. That's all their goal, right? So US and India basically having this kind of like agreement. If like Taiwan attack and South Korea attack both happen, India and USA basically combine power to do this, because US has resources, US has like money, logistics, everything. But manpower would be at a problem, and like focusing all attack against like Taiwan versus China, and then like dealing with North Korea would become too much, like he said. But if India is there, Indian manpower is there, India is like regionally close, that would help. I don't know, there could be some deal made up like that, right? I think that would be a problem because India might not ready to do that. I don't know, it depends on like what is like a current regime is trying to do, because that would definitely sour relationship with India and Russia. But just so they can go against China, I think India might do it. I don't know. Because China is like an increasing threat to India. Very increasing. Because I feel like in next 2 decades, there might be like full-blown, like attack between India and China. Will it be called as war? Or because of like two nations being powerful enough, it will be just like a friction with some result? I don't know. But it's fucked up. Right, well, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you next time.